All right, let's move along to wide receivers. The guys at the top of our rankings, Devontae Adams, Julio Jones, Tyreek Hill. Man, Adams just had a massive performance in week one. And obviously, Michael Thomas now dealing with an injury. So we do have a change at the top of the wide receiver leaderboard for the first time in, what feels like a year and a half or 2 years. But TJ, how are you stacking your top three wide receivers?
I agree with you guys. Adams and Julio 1 and 2, with especially with Julio and that potential shootout against Dallas in a super concentrated passing game. Tyreek, I'm actually going to put him behind DeAndre Hopkins just because DeAndre Hopkins such a big part of that offense last week. And as Raybon mentioned, Washington, their weakness is on the back end. Love Tyreek. I think you could kind of do 3A, 3B, but with the Chiefs, like there's 5 guys that could score the touchdowns on that team. So if he doesn't get, the 2 touchdowns, it could just be not as big of a game as the other 3 guys.
Sean, how do you have the top 3?
Yeah, so I have it Devontae number 1, of course. We'll have to monitor Mike Thomas's injury, and it's going to be brutal. He plays Monday night, so we might not know if he's active until the day of. So that's going to be tricky for season-long leagues. And then I have Julio number 3. And my fantasy of having Julio and Calvin Ridley both ranked in the top 5 is potentially coming soon. I have Ridley number 7. So hopefully in the next couple weeks we can get Ridley in the top 5 with Julio.
Who do you have number 2?
Oh, I said Mike Thomas.
Oh, you have Mike Thomas.
Yeah, I have Mike
second.
Thomas number 2. I mean, how can we?
The dude from Cincinnati?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Mike Thomas. No, I have Michael Thomas number 2 for now.
Okay. I don't have him anywhere close to my top 10. Like for me, it's a pretty significant fade, and I'll be monitoring the news and make adjustments. But yeah, right now, I'm pretty down on him. Raybon, what are you doing with Michael Thomas, and how are you looking at your top 3?
Yeah, I just lowered his, kind of expectation to account for the chances of missing a game. So yeah, he's further down for me. I'm not looking at it now, but I believe he's in the 10th or something like that. So, but it's essentially because I knocked him down and a high ankle sprain. That doesn't sound ideal. So I think I will probably not have him in the top 3, even if he's active in week 2. Have Devontae with Julio really, really close, and Tyreek number 3.
Okay. I have Devontae number 1, Julio number 2. I'm probably going to catch some grief for this, and I will probably end up adjusting it, but I don't care. I have Amari number 3. He had a tough matchup, but he had 14 targets, and he still ended up having, a not horrible game, given that he was going against Jalen Ramsey. I think given the situation that he has now, the offense at home, fantastic matchup, I still think he's going to have the most targets out of anyone on this team. And given that I'm expecting a onslaught from Dallas, I want to go with Amari. And, we have him ranked in the top 5 collectively. So I feel like, and I'm probably the one who's dragging Amari up to number 5 by ranking him number 3. But I don't know. I just part of it is that I'm very bullish on the Cowboys this season in general. And so that prior is impacting the projections right now because it is still just week 2. But the fact that Cooper had so much volume in week 1 is also part of what's factoring into this.
I have number 5. So you're not 5. Yeah.
TJ, who is a wide receiver that you are very optimistic on this week?
This week and again, just in general, going forward, Will Fuller, 10 targets accounted for 32.3% of Houston's targets. That was the 7th highest target share in week 1. Friedman, you mentioned Deshaun Watson could struggle a little bit. I agree with that, but the way fantasy scoring works, your quarterback can be down and your wide receiver 1 could be up. They could be in some negative game scripts, so I think he's in line for double-digit targets again. And obviously, we all know that Fuller has as much upside as almost any wide receiver in the league. So I really love Fuller this week, priced down as wide receiver 14 on DraftKings, wide receiver 27 on FanDuel. So love him over there, but targeting Fuller heavily this week.
Totally agree. That feels way too cheap, and I have him ranked number 10. We have him number 16 in our ranking, so I'm higher than Sean and Raybon on Fuller. Maybe foolishly so, but I'm with you. I want to be invested. as much as I can, as long as he is healthy, because who knows how long that will last. Sean, who is a wide receiver you are high on?
I'm pretty high on CeeDee Lamb going forward. I liked what I saw in his debut. I think his after the catch ability is elite. And, I mentioned earlier, Blake Jarwin injury could force them to, throw to CeeDee Lamb even more. So I like him. This is going to be a shootout against the Falcons. So I love just stacking this game as many ways possible. And I think CeeDee Lamb will be my most owned player in this game. And then Robbie Anderson, I feel like I try to never underestimate Robbie Anderson, and I feel like we all did going into the season. But he has the potential to be the number 2 number 3 target in this offense. And they're going to face a ton of negative game scripts. Teddy Bridgewater showed he's not really afraid of throwing it deep to Anderson. We saw that on the 75-yard touchdown. So I think going forward, I think I'm going to be a little bit more bullish on Robbie Anderson. And this is a matchup against the Buccaneers where they could throw his way deep a couple times here.
Raybon, who is someone you are high on?
I mean, I had CeeDee Lamb in the outline and my number 1 guy, and Sean stole him, but totally agree. CeeDee Lamb was essentially a full-time player in week 1, and this Falcons defense can't stop anyone. Some other guys I like, I like T.Y. Hilton a lot. I think that, he ran the most routes for the Colts, and you look at what Devontae Adams did to this Vikings defense. And again, I think early in the year, the one edge you could sometimes have is to not kind of let those prior perceptions from last year and what the defenses were influence you early on. And so, I'm looking at this like this Vikings defense is a below average defense until proven wrong. And this game could be a big shootout. And then some other guys, Corey Davis at 4K, he kind of really surprised, in the game on Monday night, 100 yards. I think that he's going to be a bigger part of this offense, and it's a pretty good matchup for him against Jacksonville. And on the other side, I like Laviska Shenault Jr. We thought that he might break out early on. He scored a touchdown, also got a couple of carries, lined up in the backfield a couple of times, and Dede Westbrook looks like he's completely out of the rotation, which opens up a spot for Shenault. And I think his role is only going to grow.
Raymond, I'm with you there on Hilton. In fact, I think I need to go back into my projections and look at some of my numbers because something might be off, but I have Hilton in the top 10. Like that might be too aggressive, but everything you mentioned there, the matchup, the fact that he actually has a quarterback whose skill set is a little more conducive to getting production out of a wide receiver. So it's a good situation for him.
2 key drops for him too. So he could have had a much bigger game. He had 2 key drops and essentially put the loss on himself in that game. Yeah.
So I'm very much on T.Y. Hilton this week. TJ, who is a wide receiver you are fading?
DJ Shark, man. He's a player that I hate to say it about because he was one of my most drafted players in best ball, but we saw Jacksonville in a neutral game script have basically a 50-50 pass run split, only 20 balls up for grabs, and only 3 of those went to DJ Shark. We saw Laviska involved. Gardner Minshew is going to pull it down and run a little bit, so I don't know if there's going to be much passing volume there. I mean, Shark wasn't even number 2 in targets. He was 3rd in targets among wide receivers. So I'm nervous about him and that wide receiver breakdown in general.
Sean, what about you?
I'm pretty concerned about Cooper Kupp after week 1. I've talked about this Rams offense looked a little bit different than I was expecting. They're going to run through Robert Woods and Tyler Higbee, similar to what we saw last year. So I think Cooper Kupp, he's going to have to rely on his touchdown ability, and I think that's going to make him a little bit more fickle than people want. So I consider him more of a low-end wide receiver 2 heading into this matchup against the Eagles, which is a pretty big concern because heading into the year, I thought he could be a low-end wide receiver 1. But just based on the first signs of this offense, I'm pretty bearish on him right now.
Raybon, who do you have?
Jamison Crowder, last week was such a predictable big week for him. The Bills are lights out against tight ends. They have good corners on the outside so they can lock up, Perriman and Hogan. But in this matchup against the Niners, I think the defense is a little stronger, all the way around. And while I do think that they're going to still kind of have to avoid the outside a little bit because Sherman's still there, overall, just not the same type of matchup for Crowder in a game that I love the under. I think we all bet the under in this game when it first came out. So just not a game where and also I'm not expecting San Francisco to, this sounds crazy, but be nearly as good as Buffalo on offense. So I don't think that the Jets will get into like a shootout situation. Crowder had a 69-yard touchdown. That's not going to happen every week. So 5.4K his salary kind of jumped up. I prefer to kind of sit this one out with him. And obviously the injured guys, if they play, not in great spots either. Cortland Sutton going against the Steelers at 6K and Devontae Parker at 5.9K. A little too much for each of those guys considering that they're banged up.
All right, a guy I'm looking to stay away from is Keenan Allen. And this goes along with what TJ said earlier about his concern for Tyrod Taylor. It's just a negative situation all the way around for that offense. I do think that Mike Williams has a skill set that actually might be better with Tyrod Taylor, who can throw it down the field, and Williams has a chance at getting it. Whereas with Keenan Allen, I think it requires a little more timing, just a little more familiarity. And of course, Hunter Henry is there who can compete for targets in the middle of the field. So I think it's a bad situation all the way around for Keenan Allen. And he's someone I just anticipate having very little exposure to in DFS for the rest of the season.